Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and today we're here to do it. We're here to defend the Joy-Con, perhaps the most joyful controller Nintendo's ever made.
Maybe.
Who knows? But before we tell you if we believe that hypothesis, I want to believe that you'll do the following things for me. You'll like the video. You'll join the Discord link as usual, top of the description. You'll subscribe
While
to the
you're
channel.
down there.
You'll while you're down there. You'll ring the bell, and most importantly, you will feed the algorithm and leave a comment telling us if you like the Joy-Con. But here,
what you really should do, get your fork, get your knife, get your bib on, and go like this. Feed the algorithm, feed the algorithm, feed the algorithm.
Just to yourself, face a wall and do that. No cameras,
exactly.
Just for your own enjoyment. But just leave a comment that says, like, hey, I'd love to talk to you with the Joy-Con in the Discord. Because I swear to God, if you leave a YouTube comment, I will not respond to it. Tucker might, but I will not.
No, probably. I respond to a lot of them. Unless they're, like, completely irrelevant or, like, inflammatory, I respond to almost all of them, yeah.
But if you want to have a deeper conversation, join the Discord, right? We're always talking about something.
Oh, yeah.
Always talking about something.
Yeah. Today it's sex and movies.
Tucker. Yeah.
That's true. That's a fact.
Joy-Con. Sure. That is 100% true.
Yeah.
Here's what else is true. Nintendo has been in hot water because of the Joy-Con for pretty much the last, 6 years, right?
Yeah.
And just recently, a lawsuit over the Joy-Con was settled in Nintendo's favor, basically putting the error with the Joy-Con in the Joy-Con drift, which is the pervasive issue in the community since the Switch has been around.
Yeah, of course.
Squarely sort of in the realm of responsibility of the end user. And this really...
I didn't hear about that. That's weird.
Yeah, this is only broken the last couple of days. It's like a fucking legal proceeding, so who cares? You know what I mean? Like, that's not very clickable, right?
Yeah, I don't care.
That's what happened recently. Yeah. And as is been kind of tradition, since the Switch has been out, people have taken issue with the Joy-Con, but Tucker, I'm not really one of those people.
No.
And I don't think you are either. And so we're here today to talk about why the Joy-Con are based, actually. But before we do, I want to just reiterate, because I was talking about this on Twitter a couple weeks ago. I recognize that Joy-Con drift is an issue.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what it seems like happens in a lot of conversation around the Joy-Con is that you say you like the Joy-Con, and then people say, but they drift.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we maybe have a larger conversation about their design intent and various things. And I think we can do that without being bootlickers, right?
Sure.
I think we can recognize that I have gone through many a pair of Joy-Con because of drift, but nonetheless, I still really enjoy the controllers.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to talk about today. But I really have been talking too much. So, Tucker, I want to turn it over to you to be in this conversation with why you actually hold the Joy-Con in even higher regard than I do.
Yeah, I hold them in incredibly high regard. I don't think they're the greatest controllers ever made, but I think they might be my favorite. Something like the Xbox One controller or even the 360 controller, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, those are probably more comfortable, but they're certainly less interesting. And the intrigue is why I personally like the Joy-Con. And I think what I'm really excited to do here, and this is going to be a first for the internet, as far as I know. If you know of another example, leave it in the comments below. But what we're here to do today is have a conversation with nuance. And that doesn't happen very often on the internet. We can recognize, as you and I both have experienced, the Joy-Con drift happens a lot, and Nintendo is, frankly, they're a piece of shit for saying it's on the user. What the fuck are you talking about? It's not like 20 people are having these problems because they dropped them in a vat of fucking barbecue sauce. No. I don't do anything obscene to my Joy-Con, and it happens anyway. Do we know why Joy-Con drift? It's something on the insides of the controller. I'm not a tech genius, but the Joy-Con, in their versatility and their unique form factor, make them the most engaging controller to use, in my opinion. I think from the beginning, the Switch, in its versatile nature of being on the go or at home on your TV with nice 1080p visuals, with less good visuals but on a smaller screen, whatever it is, it's the Joy-Con that actually make the system what it is, in my opinion. And we sort of had a conversation a few days ago about what is the identity of the Switch. It seems to have lost a few bits of identity that past Nintendo generations have, but I think the Joy-Con are everything for the Switch. They are the versatility. They are the local co-op. They are the HD rumble. They have the NFC built into it. And they're the logo, of course. So everything about them has become the identity of this Switch generation, except for the games, but also many of the games, especially earlier on in the generation, take their inspiration solely from what the Joy-Con can do, and much like what the Wiimote allowed games to do, and much like the gamepad allowed games to do, I really love that Nintendo was bold enough to make controllers that don't work properly. Just kidding, but bold enough to split the controller down the middle and make it so versatile and weird that, yeah, some people might say they're too small, might say that they don't quite fit the form factor they're used to, but it's something that no one else is doing, obviously, and it's a design trend that you can track back, and I love that about the Joy-Con.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll just say sort of negatively is that my Joy-Con experience was sort of like a ship, a quote-unquote ship of Theseus situation.
I see.
Wherein, like, every part keeps... What's the idea of ship of Theseus? Like, every part, like, breaks or something?
Yeah, and you replace it, and then is it the original Joy-Con of Theseus by the end?
Yeah. As you can probably tell, we're not smart. Right?
No,
but we had some insights.
Never made claims to. Well, that's probably not true, but...
But so my launch Switch.
Yeah.
Those gray Joy-Con from May 3rd, 2017, they fucking drifted out into the Baltic Sea. That's how much they're drifting, right? And I've just bought more and more pairs because I just like them because I'm like, ooh, pretty color.
Yeah.
Right? So I have a lot, and most are drifting, but I will say, my OLED Joy-Con, no drift.
Yeah.
I want to say that that's because they fixed the issue.
Not sure.
Again, goose our engagement and give us some factual information in the comments section. Let me know if I've just gotten lucky with these Joy-Con, or if they're actually repaired. But I think that you make a great point about when you move beyond sort of like the execution of the sort of build quality, right? There's a really interesting design there. What I want to boil in on is a point you were sort of ending on, is this idea of like tracing back a design legacy.
Yeah.
Because I think back to like the N64 era, which is home to maybe the best controller.
Do you believe that? No, you don't.
No, I don't believe that.
You like it, but...
I do like it, but I definitely don't believe
okay,
it.
We want to clarify something there.
Yeah. We saw there Nintendo really assert themselves as we talked about in our retrospective about the N64, as the party console. And they really stepped into their role as the reigning kings of couch co-op, right?
Yeah.
And accessible multiplayer fun. But you got one N64 controller in that box, right?
It's true.
You unpack a GameCube, you got one. Even the Wii, which is quite interesting, a lot of the original Wii bundles had a single Wii remote in there.
True.
And there was always this sense with the Nintendo hardware that to really get to the heart of what Nintendo is, this local multiplayer experience, in large part, you needed to shell out for extra peripherals.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And the Switch feels like Nintendo saying, let's bake one pillar of our identity right into the machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I always appreciated from day one when I first got that launch Switch is that it was immediately understandable and intuitive the ways a lot of Nintendo's multiplayer games themselves are.
Sure.
So easy to break the Joy-Con off the Switch and pass them to my sister. The Switch comes out on the 3rd of March. On the 4th of March, I leave on a trip to go see my grandparents.
Yeah.
And in the car, my sister and I are playing Fast RMX there, of course. Right away.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, a universal experience of Switch.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just think that there's something really wonderful about the fact that from day one, as soon as you open that box, you are being presented with the ability to have fun, local, multiplayer Nintendo experiences. And that is something that is incredibly smart. And in my opinion, part of what makes the Switch so successful is that you're immediately connected to what is, for especially a lot of casual audiences, a great appeal of Nintendo in their library.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this sort of overarching concept I'm spelling out here?
Well, there's 2 points that I want to spring off from that. The first thing is that having local multiplayer for a handheld system is something that I think can't be understated, but I think has been understated. Frankly, I haven't heard people talk about that much at all since the Switch came out, and that was the basic novelty of it. But most people were focused on, we're playing Breath of the Wild, of course, it's a single-player game. It's the in the dock, out of the dock, ooh, look how fast it is, swing, swing, swing. But the idea that you can, on the go, set up the Switch like a little TV and have local multiplayer because of the Joy-Con, and because each Joy-Con functions as its own semi-functional controller. You can't play every game with just one Joy-Con, but you can play a lot of damn games with just one Joy-Con. That, I think, is so unique because I never really had the experience of playing multiplayer games, period, on handheld systems. The closest I got was trading Pokemon and playing PictoChat, which didn't require a Wi-Fi connection or whatever, you could do that on a bus. But that aspect of Nintendo handheld systems and handheld gaming in general had always eluded me because sometimes they required link cables if it's before the DS. They required Wi-Fi connections, which I was a dumb kid who could never really understand how I was supposed to connect my DS to the Wi-Fi to trade Pokemon online for the GTS or whatever. But out of the box, the Switch having 2 fully functional controllers for playing games like Fast RMX, or I think the best example being Snipperclips, which is the game, and Super Bomberman R and 1-2 Switch, these games that don't have a current status as some of the greatest of the generation, but were really important for getting me really invested in the Switch early on because it was something I had never experienced before, and that, here's the second point, allowed my friends and people around me to become significantly more engaged with, I kind of want to get my own one of these. It was me and my friends setting up and playing Super Bomberman R, which was our party game of choice when the system came out, and getting a couple other friends' Joy-Cons. Lord, we need to praise the Joy-Con for one thing, and it's how easy they are to connect to the system. You pop them on the side, it's synced. It's that easy. It's not the Xbox 360 where you're pressing 3 buttons and waiting for the lights to sync up, and you're oh, how do I do this? The fact that the system in itself, in the controllers, allows more people to engage with it, allowed the Switch to spread like wildfire within my friend group because we were all used to using Joy-Con. We all knew how they slid on and off the system, how they could be turned on the side. I think I only ever a couple times had a friend put a Joy-Con strap on the wrong way and you have to wrestle with it to get it off. But everyone understood the grammar of using a Switch because it was more widespread, even though it was very revolutionary. There had never been a system where there's a button on the back of the controller to unlock the thing, to slide it off and turn it on the side and put on the strap, and that makes it bigger, and these buttons are inside the rail. These are all things that aren't particularly intuitive on face value because they are so revolutionary, but you teach a group of friends this once and they boom already know it, and when they get their Switch they're not going to fuck it up. And I just like how that builds a sense of community because of the Joy-Con.
Yeah, you said something that I love. The idea of there being a sort of simple grammar about the Nintendo Switch and its Joy-Con. I think that's an amazing sort of turn of phrase for what I really wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
Is how intuitive they are on a hardware level, then also on a gameplay level. And I think you make a great point also, just as an aside, about how easy it is to sync them. Yeah. It's not the Wii U where I have to calculate the angle between the fucking moon and my console to figure out how long to hold down the little red button for, right? It's click it on, it's immediately synced. Yeah. But you're totally right about particularly the SL and SR buttons, which I think are genius. And it goes into why I think the Joy-Con are such successful controllers in the ability to not only take it off and have it be a functional controller, but a controller that so clearly and immediately interfaces smartly with the console and with the hand, right? Yeah. They recognize, well, when we remove the controller, these are obviously no longer usable shoulder buttons. So what if we hide them in here? I think that's incredibly smart. But what's even more smart, specifically on Joy-Con L, are the arrows.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, yeah. And that's a common complaint with the Joy-Con. But I think you and I agree that it's an overall positive design decision.
I think that the universal complaint, or what I think the universal complaint should be, is that Nintendo has yet to sell an official Joy-Con L with a D-pad.
Yeah.
And to that, and I don't know why they haven't, because I would buy one in a heartbeat and put that on there for single-player play. But I think, again, you have to contextualize the decision to include the directional buttons opposed to directional pad with this ethos of intuitive local multiplayer with an understandable grammar for gameplay.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you make the prompt for selection not A, but the shaded in right-hand button of the four, you are so immediately and clearly able to convey the same information about an upright pair of Joy-Con as you are a single sideways Joy-Con. No matter how you rotate this controller, the rightmost button, shaded button, is the one you want to click to confirm something.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's a simple point if you've played Switch, but it's important, I think, to hammer in because it's a really small but incredible design decision that highlights just how thoroughly the Joy-Con were conceptualized by Nintendo, I think. As soon as you've unrailed that Joy-Con,
Unsheathed.
I don't know. Unsheathed, I like that more. It so seamlessly tracks within the same UI language as a Pro controller does, or as a Joy-Con pair do.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why your friends, my family, and everybody are able to so quickly enjoy those controllers.
Yeah.
Even just recently, when I was visiting Jean and her sister, we had my Switch and then her sister's Switch, and we were playing 4-player Mario Party Superstars and Mario Kart. And to this day, they just adapted this universal vernacular of not A to confirm, but shaded right face button to confirm. And I just think it's so smart that this has been continual, so the Joy-Con experience remains so simple and understandable in 2017 as it does in 2023.
Yeah, and I do think that simplicity is something that really hardcore gamers who want the Xbox controller, they want the Pro controller with the back paddles, they want all these buttons that they have gotten used to that being what a game controller allows them to do, might take issues with the Joy-Con, but I do think that it was a smart design decision on Nintendo's side to make them as bare bones of a modern controller, a single Joy-Con, as bare bones of a modern controller as you can possibly be, while making them more conceptually complex. Its complexity comes from the fact that it's two controllers that make one controller, but they can each be their own controller, and now there's buttons on the side that you're not going to use at all, even though they are there. But is that basically a single Joy-Con on its side is a Super Nintendo controller. And that's perfect. That is the vernacular that has been baked into every game controller, except for maybe the Wiimote, since the SNES controller, unless it's got extra buttons like a Genesis controller, but whatever, is 4 buttons or a joystick for controlling your character, and 4 buttons that do everything else, and then the bumpers, of course, which the SNES controller also introduced. And I think the fact that there could have been a Nintendo that looked at a single Joy-Con, they're like, okay, we want these to be separatable and used up for local multiplayer, but we want to make sure that they still work for the modern concept of controller. So what if we have that stupid little C nub that's on the new Nintendo 3DS, like, so that there's 2 joysticks so you can control cameras, but they, I think smartly, not only from a visual design perspective, but from my mom, your mom, people who have not played a ton of video games, but maybe held a Genesis controller, held a Super Nintendo controller, held a Wiimote, can connect to the button layout of this, rather than the relative complexity that is a PS5 controller or an Xbox One controller, something like that has multiple triggers and multiple joysticks and these extra buttons in the middle that are start and select. The Joy-Con pairs that back almost to where it's not recognizable as a modern controller.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to note about that is that it's a controller that's designed for the sort of game Nintendo makes. When you think about multiplayer on Switch, I think that Smash Brothers is really the only game that's sort of compromised in a marked way by using a single Joy-Con on the side. Even though it's far more comfortable to play every one of Nintendo's multiplayer games with more than a single Joy-Con.
Yeah.
With the exception of Smash Brothers, which had the same issue with Brawl on Wii.
Yeah, of course.
the design philosophy Nintendo has of their multiplayer experience as being very approachable and mechanically simple with higher skill ceilings is designed to fit this, right? I think too when people were taking issue with the Wii remote because it wasn't as complex as the other 7th generation pads.
Yeah.
Nintendo wasn't making games that were as complex as those other as their competitors were.
They weren't making Infamous or Gears of War. They were making Mario Kart Wii, which is not really much more complex than Mario Kart 64.
Yeah, and that's not me disparaging Nintendo.
Yeah.
But instead saying that Nintendo's design beauty doesn't come from excess. It comes from simplicity, and it comes from using basic and interlocking, understandable controls and mechanics to make a timelessly fun experience. And so the controller fits within that.
Yeah.
It's not really a sacrifice to play with a single Joy-Con in anything other than comfort, because the design philosophy of the game on a utility level scales down to this little guy perfectly. But I also think, to pivot the conversation somewhere elsewhere, the controllers have a lot of sophisticated technology within them.
Absolutely. They're simple from a layout perspective, but the technology inside is just as complex as having two together, or even the Pro controller. They each one, for the most part, though, there are like differences obviously between the right and left Joy-Con, which I think is an interesting sacrifice in terms of how they balance like which the IR camera and the screenshot button and the home button and the QR, not the QR code, the NFC. Sorry, the NFC reader. They balance those in interesting ways, but they're layout simple. They're not tech simple.
Yeah, they're a Trojan horse, if you will.
Oh yeah.
This is really the golden goose, though. The Joy-Con R, because it's got that silly little IR camera on the bottom, and the Joy-Con.
That's probably the funniest thing on the Joy-Con.
Yeah.
Has it been used that much? Labo, Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2. I believe you can reload by putting it to your hand or something like that. I can't.
Dr.
A burger contest.
Dr. Kawashima's brain training was he play rock paper scissors with it.
Wouldn't know.
Yeah, this is an interesting case where outside of Labo, the sort of application for a lot of this tech is not maybe as ubiquitous as it could be. And that's part of the reason why I continue to hope for more Blue Ocean software on Switch that keeps exercising all of the capabilities of these controllers to their fullest. But the one I really want to hone in on is HD Rumble.
Sure. Because
I think HD Rumble is excellent.
Yeah.
I had posted on Twitter about how I like the Joy-Con, and one of my friends, Kieran, he said that, it's good, but it's no DualSense haptics. But I disagree. I actually don't think the difference in quality between HD Rumble and the DualSense haptics is that big. Yeah. And I've got a DualSense right there.
Yeah.
I love the DualSense.
And you love that haptics.
Yeah, I fucking do. But the difference, and I think the one place where I really do knock the Joy-Con is that there are no analog triggers.
Of course, yeah.
They're digital triggers. What separates the HD Rumble from the haptics is the way that the haptics play with the capacitive or resistive, whatever they fucking call them.
The resistive capacity?
Oh, who gives a turkey?
Yeah.
The thing that makes it when I'm playing, I don't know, name a
Modern
shooter.
Warfare 2?
Modern Warfare 2. When I pull the trigger, begrudgingly, when I pull the trigger, it feels like there's resistance.
Of course.
When I pull the trigger, but that's the difference. It's not what the Joy-Con can provide in HD Rumble is maybe even more acute in some ways than what the haptics can do. When you think about like 1-2 switch, for example.
100%, and I think that is why when I think of uses of Rumble in games, it is either as simple as you can get, and it's, oh, hey, look, it's Star Fox 64, and now you've got the Rumble Pack, and the controllers go, because fucking whatever is happening in the game. Or it's, frankly, the more memorable aspects for me of uses of Rumble are in Switch games with that HD Rumble, primarily in 1-2 Switch, but even, more subtle things like finding a moon hidden in the dirt in Super Mario Odyssey to, like, ground pound on it. But it is ball count that still to this day is my favorite use of Rumble in a video game because it feels revolutionary. I think that the difference between the haptics in the DualSense and the HD Rumble in the Joy-Con is that the HD Rumble in the Joy-Con is a lot more subtle. It's not trying to really hammer home that this is shaking. It's like shaking your hands shaking. You can feel the shaking in different parts of your hand because of where the little motors are in the controller. And for me, that's more impactful than playing something like Astro's Playroom. Sorry, my bad. I almost got the mixed up with Rescue Mission. Astro's Playroom or Miles Morales, which are the two games that obviously came with or we played at launch with the console and used the haptics in different ways. But that was making my hands almost numb because it was so strong. Or it was I'm kind of annoyed by the having to pull the trigger down and then squeeze a little more, which is not something I'd ever had to do with the controller. And while I do think that is forward thinking in a different way and has been used in interesting ways in certain games, I think the versatility and the subtleness of HD Rumble to me speaks way more volumes than it being so powerful that it physically was making my hands numb from admittedly playing Astro's Playroom for like 6 hours to get the platinum in one night. But I prefer it to be more granular Rumble than any other console has had before this or since.
And when Rhythm Heaven comes to Switch this year, and some of the mini games have positional timed Rumble in the Joy-Con, you're gonna be on my fucking side.
Me?
I'm telling you that. No, I'm talking to the audience.
Oh, okay.
I'm pointing through YouTube to the audience.
Oh my god! Watch out! His fingers coming through the screen. Ah!
I also just want to shout out the general comfort of playing games like this.
That was the next point I was going to bring up. Yes.
I'm a split Joy-Con fan.
So am I.
Talk to me about it.
Split Joy-Con, to me, is the most comfortable way to play a video game. And it has been so comfortable in certain instances. And, of course, it doesn't make me not play games with my controller together.
Right.
But that if I am really into the Switch for, say, like a month, I'm playing whatever new release it is, and then I'm so into my Switch at that point, so I'm playing some indie games, I'm doing whatever, I'm really into the Switch ecosystem, and I get used to being able to hold Joy-Con however I want and put in my pockets or cross my arms. I like playing my games like this while I'm like relaxing on the couch with my arms like completely crossed. That is so freeing from the confines of holding my hands together that I am immersed in a game even more so. And combined with the relative simplicity of HD Rumble, like feeling very natural in my hands, Switch games, even with their lowered visual fidelity as compared to something on the other consoles, they are more physically immersive because I'm feeling Rumble that is matching to my hands in certain ways. And I'm able to put my hands wherever the hell I want, and then I'll go back to like... I'm playing with them by my groin sometimes, inside my pants. But then I'll go back to playing on an Xbox controller, on my PS4, PS3, whatever, and I'm like, I wanna separate a little bit. And it's a flexibility that I don't expect from anywhere else, but I do think it's a huge positive that not a lot of people use, because the people that we're talking to about games are hardcore gamers, and they love that Pro Controller, which guess what? I love that Pro Controller as well. One of my favorite controllers of all time. But I almost do prefer, and I would say I do prefer, using Joy-Con Split because it's just as functional, but infinitely more freeing of an experience.
Yeah, if I will just say as an aside, if the Switch Pro Controller's D-pad wasn't cock and ball torture (parentheses derogatory) of in the pantheon of D-pads, it'd be my favorite controller.
Sure.
But that D-pad is so fucking bad. I don't know how they did that. That was weird, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm just having a day today. You know what I mean?
It's all right. We'll get through this together. I want some joy. I want to share the joy with you.
Yes.
Split
Joy-Con.
No,
you're right. I think that obviously the and it's funny in the context of the conversation we were having the other day about like the Switch in part rejecting a lot of the Wii era philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
The controllers are very much of it, right?
Of course, absolutely.
They're like, what if we could break that Wii Remote nunchuck umbilical cable so you can do this, right?
And it makes going back to the Wii Remote and nunchuck a little bit painful because you're like, I can move my hands a little bit, but not that much. Because guess what? The nunchuck cord is tiny. And obviously people complain about that because they use those exact same cords on the NES Classic. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah, terrible. I don't like using a nunchuck now because I'm like, I just want to be able to move my hands even farther apart, but I can't because they have to be physically tied.
See, I don't know about that. I'm not when I'm playing split Joy-Con. I'm not more like this far away. I used to have
I play like this. I play like I'm Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, you play. I bet Jesus is. How long did you spend on that fucking cross? A couple days.
Yeah, you could play some Breath of the Wild in that time.
He could. Yeah, he could have like this.
Yeah,
he would have even noticed like the nails in his hand or whatever, right?
It's true, because the HD roll would have soothed the pain.
That's true. And there go the Christian viewers of Backlog.
Ah, yes, the thousands and thousands of them.
What else do you want to praise about them? Because I do have a couple complaints I want to run down.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's just go for those.
I talked briefly about how I wish these had analog triggers. And I just want to say that my number one hope for Nintendo's next system is that there are analog triggers on the controller. Now it's a little complicated because obviously it's portable. You need a little bit more. You need more room for an analog trigger.
Yeah.
But there's some great design nuance to be found in having analog triggers and what you can do with a half press pulls to a full press, or sort of what GameCube did. Obviously, because GameCube had analog triggers. I put a like partial press versus a full press to determine your suck volume in Luigi's Mansion or
your spray volume.
Yeah, your suck and spray volumes.
Yeah. So
that would be a design challenge to fit nice analog triggers in somewhere, but I think that would open a whole nother realm of nuance that Nintendo could play with. These kind of look like ketchup and mustard, don't they?
Sure.
Let's put this aside for a second. The other thing I wanted to say, I need this back. I got my Switch here. There's not much travel on this right stick.
Ah, on the stick, sure.
And this is my other issue.
Or the left stick. They're the same.
Or the left stick. Right, but it's more important for aiming. I'm losing my voice, by the way.
Sorry.
But the Joy-Con are worth it. When you're playing shooters like Splatoon, or more damningly, the couple of shooters that for whatever reason don't use gyro. By the way, these have gyro. Gyro is amazing. Everyone's favorite has gyro. Luckily, PlayStation is a little bit like Horizon uses gyro for the bow if you want it now. But this is too short. You can't aim very well with this rig here.
Yeah.
So that's another oversight. But at the same time, it's sort of like it's a sort of factor for it being a portable system, and that's what the Pro Controller is for.
And that for me is a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. I've never. Yeah. I like the short stick. I mean, they're not better, but they're certainly. I've never had an issue with missing shots. Maybe I'm just better at games than you. That's certainly possible.
Of course, yeah. That's probably true.
And also, most games now, all games on Switch are not designed to use analog triggers. So I've never thought like, oh, hey, I'm not doing it, or like I'm hampered by this because the games literally aren't designed for that. Which is just a difference in like experience of like, oh, I've played some games with analog triggers, and I guess I'm just a dumb bitch because I just like use them like digital triggers anyway, unless it's like actually like fighting against me like the fucking DualShock is. But the portability and compactness of the Switch, I think, I mean, Nintendo made these decisions thoughtfully, and they're like, okay, yeah, it's gonna make you be able to aim like 15% less accurately, but like it being flatter means it'll fit in the case a little bit better, and it makes it more portable, and it's not sticking out as much, so the stick's not gonna get like fucking ripped off if you like slide your Switch against something. These are all design decisions that were made intentionally. I think the sacrifices that they made improve the Switch's experience, unless you're looking for very specific things that the Switch frankly isn't even trying to do. So that's why, even though they are issues, I think for me they end up being positives in the Switch's favor, because it shows that Nintendo is willing to make sacrifices on those sort of things to improve the Switch's unique experience, rather than feeling like they need to capitulate to what the rest of the industry is doing.
Yeah, no, you're totally. I'm thinking sort of in the case of the triggers, I'm thinking more towards the next system.
Sure.
I think that there's great
applications.
Yeah. There's great applications for an analog trigger, and I'd like to see them go back to that. But the stick, I agree with you in terms of the trade-off is worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's the same way I feel about the idea that maybe the Joy-Con are too small overall.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's because it's a portable system. It's to facilitate this form factor as well as this form factor, and I think the ability to find a middle ground between what feels good in the hand for TV or tabletop play, and then what makes sense size wise for handheld mode. I think they did that. I think they found that balance quite well.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's both a little bit bigger than you'd expect it to be as a handheld, and a little bit smaller than you expect it to be as home console. But I think by adding or subtracting like 15% from either of those modes, they land on something that's quite comfortable for either. Yeah. Not maximum comfort, but I think as we were kind of explaining, you have to make a trade-off somewhere. Every controller makes a sacrifice. Even the DualSense Edge just came out. It makes a sacrifice in battery.
Yeah, of course.
It dies in like 5 minutes. It's not sure it dies in 4 hours or whatever. But the Joy-Con, for their design intent, for the amount of technology in them, they're just a little bit smaller than you might want. And at a certain point, I think that the creativity of that design intent far outweighs the small, in my opinion, small annoyance of this being a little bit shorter than maybe like the full width of my hand as I'm holding it here.
Absolutely. And I've got one final thing that I kind of want to shift to, and it's two topics sort of in one, but I think it's where I am most disappointed by the Joy-Con. And I don't mean this as a criticism of the Joy-Con, it's a criticism of Nintendo for not utilizing the Joy-Con to what I think could be their fullest potential. Is they start off the Switch very strong with a cool reveal trailer that gets us interested in that grammar that we were talking about earlier of taking them off, playing on the side, playing in the car. Exactly. Grammar, I'm not going to say the word, but you were all thinking it. And then that continues into that January Switch presentation in which they are doing funny things with them. We're showing off that they have the NFC with the Breath of the Wild movie we've never seen before, and laying down on the couch like that for literally like 10 seconds, but they put a couch on the stage for that, or having that full animated sequence in which we're revealing that they have fun blue and red colors by snapping and pulling off the napkin over them, and there's ice cubes in here, shiver. Like that is for me some of the most memorable moments of that early Switch life cycle. This is so innovative that they're using funny ways to describe it to us. I've never seen a controller described in a unique way before. I never had to be taught how to use a controller, because even with something like the Wiimote, we came out of the womb using the Wii, and even with the gamepad, that's an iPad. We know how to use a touchscreen. We understand this concept, but HD Rumble having the capacity to show 3 ice cubes in a glass, and that you can relax your arms to the side. These are things that needed to be taught through interesting ways, or they didn't need to, but I'm glad that Nintendo leaned into that, and that follows with a good amount of that Switch's first year lineup, which is 1-2 Switch and ARMS, which are still to this day probably the best uses of the Joy-Con, alongside something like Labo or Ring Fit. Again, that more casual software. But I think Nintendo, with the strength of the Switch, in its unique design, in its simplicity, in what it allows for games to attempt to do, which no other controllers have ever had the possibility to do before, it's unfortunate that they've let that drop, primarily by introducing the Switch Lite. And the Switch Lite does not have detachable Joy-Con, and that is only portable, and it can't go on the TV, and does it even have a kickstand? Yes, no? Okay, no. Well, it doesn't. I have a Switch Lite, but I don't even remember because I've never tried. But them losing these things has meant that we pretty much have entirely lost that potential for the Joy-Con to be developed to their fullest with split Joy-Con and prioritizing local multiplayer with having them on the side, because every Nintendo game now needs to be designed to be played without split Joy-Con, without them being separatable. And that means we only got maybe 2.5 years of trying really inventive, unique things with the Joy-Con before that was pretty much entirely cut off. And now I think the games have been, in my opinion, just as good, and they've been selling a lot more, so I think it was a sacrifice that they made very intentionally. It has certainly worked in their favor, but the Joy-Con have been left to the wayside. People who have Switches, at least the ones that we talk to, are playing Switch Lite, and they don't think about them as a Joy-Con, or they have a Pro controller, and that has just been sort of lost to time. Shut up. Because Nintendo has moved on to a new design philosophy, and I think it's a little bit sad, because then the Joy-Con could... Imagine we had 6-7 years of iterating on trying new things with the Joy-Con being split, but we never got that.
You're right, and it's something I wrote about back in like 2021. But I think actually, in hindsight, I was a little misguided in what I said, because you got to think about the fact that the Switch Lite comes out for the launch of Link's Awakening Remake in September 2019.
And Pokemon Sword and Shield, which I think is probably the more clear analog of why they not launched it at that time.
Yeah, but the reason I specify that is because it was a month later that we get Ring Fit, which needs the Joy-Con.
Yeah.
And even just last year, we got Nintendo Switch Sports, which cannot be played without them.
Oh, that's a great point.
And so, of course, hold on. And yeah, right. Those are the two big examples. Mm-hmm. And then obviously things like Jump Rope Challenge and little fun little bonuses like that. But I don't think it's gone. And I would have to really sit with the library to see if it's even waned that much.
Sure.
Obviously, there's games like Super Mario Party built fundamentally around the Joy-Con, or Let's Go Pikachu. I mean, 2018 sort of became like a big show off
2018, yeah, that's another good one. Yeah,
obviously very similar to 2017, but that was a launch year, so we needed to really illustrate the hardware. But I do think that there are definite examples still.
Sure, well, that's definitely
Switch
true.
Lite. Skyward Sword HD being another example where,
maybe I'm just wrong.
Of course, they designed the button controls to accommodate Switch Lite, but I think it's pretty clear that there is a lot that motion control is quite impressive too.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, more central design philosophy as it was in Skyward Sword, and they chose to bring a motion-led game to Switch after Switch Lite was out. But I think you're right on the whole in that I'm still talking about a handful of games across the last several years of Switch. When you think about the Wii era, where everything used the Wii remote,
of course.
But I do think there's also a balance to be found where maybe everything shouldn't have used the Wii remote.
True.
Maybe
I agree with that. Yeah.
And maybe a couple more things should use the Joy-Con.
Yeah.
But I do still think that there is hope that as this software lineup for the year sort of unfurls itself,
as it hopefully will with the hopefully upcoming Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, that's going to happen on Thursday. I'm sure of it. Unless hopefully I upload this before Thursday. Yeah. But I guarantee you that the Mario Baseball game that we're going to get announced on Thursday and Nintendo Direct is going to happen. We'll probably let you pitch and bat with the Joy-Con. And so I think between like additional things like that and the Rhythm Heaven game is also going to get announced on Thursday and Nintendo Direct is going to use HD Rumble. I think there's still room for stuff.
Yeah. Now, final thing I want to ask you, and you can ask me the same question right back, in a reverse if you want. What's your favorite use of the Joy-Con? What's the most memorable use of the Joy-Con that you've had with the Switch in the last 6 years?
Do you have an answer? You go first. I feel like you might have an answer prime.
Yeah, well, my answer is certainly ARMS, as I think that is the big game that is outside of 1-2 Switch the most focused on what the Switch can do with what the Joy-Con can do, informing its design philosophy in a way that fewer games have since then. I think you're right in examples like Ring Fit Adventure. That game can't be done with any other controller. I think that's another great example. But ARMS being the one that I gravitated to because it was a classic Nintendo concept of marrying the hardware innovation with software innovation that can't be separated. You can play ARMS with button controls, and frankly, it's better with the button controls, but they designed that game from the ground up and showed it off from the ground up of this is for punching. This is for using them separately and tilting them side to side because the gyro is synced between the two of them, even though they're separated. That game connected with me so much that to this day, whenever I think of the Joy-Con, I can't think of anything else but punching with the characters in ARMS and controlling my character solely through motion controls, which is a thing that I had not really experienced in games. And it was all because of what the Joy-Con allowed that team and Yabuki to design. Something totally out of left field that we haven't seen again.
Yeah. There's also going to be ARMS 2 in the Nintendo Direct happening on Thursday.
Jesus Christ, don't fucking get me started.
I think mine is probably when I was building the Labo Variety Kit. because while Labo is literally no fun at all to play, the process of building it was really quite special.
Yeah.
And just sort of demonstrating through the piano, through the fishing rod, and the goose. Did the goose come with that one?
No, I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think that's.
The goose. The goose went with the VR kit, which I also have.
Yeah.
I have a 5-gallon tub under my desk at home of Nintendo Labo and Mario Kart Home Invasion cardboard.
Yeah.
That I feel like I can't throw away because it's really expensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But no, that was. Labo
and when you inevitably
really
want to write about it for one of your dumb fuck magazines, you're gonna need to test it.
It's a great point. But I would shout out Labo. I'd also just shout out the general experience of being in the car with my sister and saying, let's play Mario Kart.
Yeah.
And taking those Joy-Con off.
Absolutely.
Being in, I distinctly remember a family trip and being in a hotel room, passing around Joy-Con and various things. I just, in a tabletop mode in general, doesn't get sort of the respect put on its name that it deserves.
Yeah.
I sometimes even just play tabletop mode by myself at my desk.
Yeah.
So,
what the main example of what the Switch was so exciting for me when I first got it was being able to play it in class. And you don't have to have your hands on a controller on the desk because you put your on Joy-Con Switch onto your school iPad. It looks like you're looking at your school iPad and learning something, and you put your Joy-Con full hands in your hoodie pocket, and no one can fucking tell what you're doing, and it's great. And I can play Doom, and I can play Fire Emblem in class, and no one even knows, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I did that one time in chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I played Kirby Star Allies. I just put it flat on the desk. I didn't even have my computer out. I had like a textbook. And I had like textbooks layered, and I slid the Joy-Con like partial under a textbook. Or switch under a textbook.
Yeah.
And put my hand on the table. But last thing.
Okay.
Do you want to just elaborate on the thing you told me you did with the Joy-Con?
In my pants? No, that's for later.
No. When you said you put it in your bottom and you put on ball count and we're
that's
like
shaking that's in my. Oh well, yeah, that's also in my pants. So I was talking about that one. Yeah, let's not. Yeah. We'll save that for later.
Save it for later. Okay, that's fine. Anything else you want to share?
No, I think I'm done. Just guys, Joy-Con are cool. Actually,